Hi, everybody in webinar land. I'm Danny Gregory, and we are here for the second webinar in the series to do with our class, Be an iPad Artist. And it looks like there's a bunch of iPad artists waiting in the wings. That's very exciting. If you have any question, please make sure that you add it to the comments. And if you do, capitalize the word question, put a colon, a dash, a hyphen, and then your question, so I can quickly scroll through and find them, because I know there's a lot of questions, and I've seen a bunch of questions that have been already posted in the schoolyard, and we will address those one by one. But first of all, I just want to say how happy I am with how this class is progressing, and how nice it is to see all of this work that you guys are doing out there in the schoolyard, and posting and sharing in various places. So it's really, really good, and I hope that you're having a good time too. Excellent, good. So tell me if you can't see or hear me, or why doesn't one person, or Joanna, can you see me and hear me? That would be great to know. And meanwhile, I will consume some Sketchbook School coffee. Thumbs up, anybody? Just double checking that in fact all the technical doodads are working. I see a lot of you are busy working and doing other things, but are playing mini hooky to hang out with us today. That's great. So anybody out there who can just tell me, yep, okay, Joanna, thank you so much. Sorry I have to go through this every time. I should probably be watching this and doing it, but then we will get reverb and feedback. So excellent. So I'm going to go through all the questions that were posted in the schoolyard first, and then we are going to go through whatever questions you guys post here after I clean my spectacles. So here we go. All right. Let me look at the voluminous questions, the vast list of questions that we have. Hold on one second. Here's one. All right. Whoops. Here we go. Let me try this. Interesting. Okay, sorry about that. I had arrayed all these questions up on the screen. All right. And I can't seem to find them at the moment. So let's just start here with Martha's question. Martha, your question, I'm sorry, guys. I had so planned to do this so seamlessly, and instead I'm blundering around a bit. But yes. Okay, so Martha's first question was that she wasn't able to drag color from the color circle at the top right to fill. Let's go and have a look at what she means. So let's pick a picture. And in fact, let me just show you from here so you can see my camera, so you can see what I'm doing. So the problem that she seems to be having is that she can't do this, which is to just take a color, pick a color, and then drag it and drop it into the screen, which is what we want to do. And I'm not entirely sure how to answer her question, because there could be, I don't know exactly what she has going on, because clearly that should work easily. It's possible that one thing that you're doing is you're holding down. And when you hold down, you're basically changing the color. Can you see that? You're changing the color, as opposed to doing what you should do, which is to be able to drag it. So make sure that you're not holding it down too hard and just changing it, but just swiping it. You see how kind of casually I swipe it like that? So it's just a casual swipe and drag and drop. If that doesn't solve your problem, I have posted on the schoolyard a link to a lengthy discussion that happened on the Procreate forum, where a few other people had a similar problem. and it wasn't clear if it was a bug or if it was a user error, but there is an extensive discussion. I personally have never had this problem, so I don't quite know how to solve it for you. However, I suggest that you go and look at this. I've also posted it for those of you who haven't gone to the schoolyard to this discussion. You'll also find a link to it in the description of this YouTube video. But if you do go to the schoolyard, go and look at the event for this particular webinar week 2, and you'll see it in there. I've answered it there. Okay? All right, let's try another one. Barb says, all right, here's Barb's question. She says, when you sketched your dogs with different brushes this week, let me just get this up here. Barb, brother, it's one of those days, you know. If it isn't the iPad, it's something else. That's a shame. Okay, so Barb basically asked, when I sketched the dogs with different brushes this week, and I resized them and I moved them around, how was I able to do that? Because she found that she was doing the whole thing. She was moving the whole page. So let's have a look at what that means. So let me see if I have actually that particular drawing of dogs, and I can show you exactly what they look like. So I think it was this. Let's say it was. Was it? No, it wasn't. So basically, I think what the trick is how am I able to isolate just one dog and move it around? So let's just pretend that, yes, here it is. Okay, this is the document. So basically, I was able to take one dog and move it around without moving the others. What was the trick to that? Okay, so one thing is, as you can see here, I had that dog on its own layer. And how did I put it on its own layer? Well, let's take these two dogs, which are on, these two dogs move together, right? So basically, it's pretty simple. I just selected it. So I go to rectangle in this case. Let's see if that works. I have a rectangle, and then I cut and paste. And now this dog is on his layer, and this dog is on his layer. I believe I showed that in the Procreate tips that I posted last week, but that's how you do it. So just make sure each of your things is on its own layer, but if you accidentally draw it on the same layer, then just cut and paste it and put it onto its own layer. And then you will be, everything will be working. So as I failed to copy and paste all of my questions as I had planned, I'm going to have to go back to the schoolyard for a second and pull them all up again, because somehow I lost in my zeal to have everything perfectly organized for today. I forgot to somehow save what I was doing. So, all right. So here's another question. This question is, when I was working, when we have a canvas that we've worked on, and later we want to, when I have a canvas that we've worked on, later we want to go back and add to it, but not lose the previous state, how do we make a copy to work on it and still keep the original? All right, so that's a good question. Let me just go back to this, and we can see me in all my glory. And so here's the question. I'm sorry, guys, I apologize for the clunkiness of this, but so the question is, just let me get my act together here. Okay, so when we have a canvas that we've worked on, and we later want to go back and add to it, but not lose the previous state? How do we make a copy and still keep the original? And is there something like a snapshot in Photoshop where you freeze and hold a certain state as you work to compare to others? Okay, so yes, there absolutely is something that you can do here. So here's what you do, and let's go back and have a look. Let's have a look here. So for instance, let's say we have my friend here. Okay, and I want to do a version of this where I want to see what it's like, but I don't want to screw this up because I'm happy with it. So what I do is I will go over here and I will simply slide to the side, and duplicate. And now I have two sets. I have two copies of him, and I can work on one, and the other one will remain unchanged. Pretty simple. I do it fairly often just to see, I wonder how that works. So it's not the same as Photoshop, which allows you to actually save a state. This, you have to basically make a copy of the file, and that's what you'd be doing there. Okay? Good. So Robert asks a different question. Let me just grab Robert's question here. Put it up here. So Robert asks, could you share what your process is regarding choosing your settings before you start a sketch or during? Do you have a checklist or routine? Well, Robert, hopefully at this point you know me well enough to know that I'm never that organized as manifested in this particular webinar. But I do think about it a bit. I do think in terms of where am I going to start? So a lot of times I'll start with big shapes, and I will open a layer and I'll draw a large shape and fill it in. And then I may say to myself, okay, I want to do some lines. So say I'm drawing a face, draw the shape of the face. Then I want to draw the lines of the features, let's say. I'll open another layer and I'll put it on that. And then I might decide that I want to draw the head, separate from the head. I want to draw, say, the shoulders and the body, and I want to have that separate because I'm not sure whether maybe I want to have the chin ahead of the body. This is a good example. When I did, I'll show you. In fact, let me just show you this particular piece, and you can see. So this guy, what I did is I drew his head first. You see, I drew. Oh, actually, I have actually collapsed these layers. So let me find a better example because a lot of times what I'll do is I'll work on something and I'll put it into a bunch of different layers, and then I will. Well, here. Okay, here's a good example. So as you can see here, there's a layer with his head, and there's a layer with his body. And the reason I did that is because when I was doing shading, I wanted to be able to shade this whole coat and the neck and so forth, and have a clean edge with my face. So I did in sections there. I also originally, I think, drew the shirt and the tie behind the coat on a separate layer, and then I compressed them, collapsed them. So I'll think of these things in terms of, like, sometimes in terms of the density of it. Here's a drawing I did of a monarch butterfly, and there's lots and lots of different layers. I think there's 13 layers. But I began by just drawing just the butterfly, and then I put in the color, and I put that color in a separate layer, and then I added some texture to him. And then I added some shading on top of that, and then I added some highlights on top of that. I also drew the layers of the city, you'll see, are individually layered so that they go back in space, and I want to have shading in between, so I put them on different planes. A lot of that is stuff that I figured out as I was going, honestly. But I had I had an idea that I wanted this butterfly to be flying in the foreground, and I wanted to have the city spread out beneath him. So that's kind of why I work on it. But a lot of times I'll just throw on another layer and another layer, just to try something out. And then if I decide I don't like it, I can either delete it. And if I like it, sometimes I'll collapse them, compress them into two, or sometimes I'll put them into a folder, into a set, and join them together so that they, like for instance, this butterfly, I should ideally really group it so that then the whole butterfly is a group. And I should have sort of grouped this whole city too and have that be also a group. So yeah, so I can do those sorts of things as I'm going and reorganizing. So I don't have a complete structure, but over time I've sort of worked this out because I have a better and better sense of how I work, and really layering allows me options and allows me to back out of stuff, so I don't get too deep into it. That's really my main thing. Janice asks another question, which I'm going to share with you now. And her question has to do with how she can make a continuous line drawing without having the annoyance of the quick draw. So basically what happens is, let's go to a new document. What Janice is describing is that she wants to be able to draw slowly, really, and if you're drawing slowly, if you take too long, eventually you'll find that the quick shape thing will, of course it's not, I think I turned mine off today is why. No, you see, yeah, so that sort of thing happens when you didn't want it to. You wanted to have a weird wonky line, and then suddenly quick shape is taking over and things are turning into geometric shapes when you didn't want them to. It's a pretty simple thing to solve. You simply go to your actions, and then you go to gesture controls, and you choose quick shape, and then you go to draw and hold. And draw and hold is, you can turn it off completely if you want to, or you can slide the slider back and forth to decide how long you want it. You want how much time you want to work before it takes over and snaps into position. So that's the answer to that. So it's and there's a lot of different settings that you can use here that I frankly don't. I haven't customized an awful lot of things. I do like to use that quick shape sometimes, but it can also be annoying and get in the way. All right, hope that's helpful. Let's see. There's a few of these questions, frankly, that I've answered in the schoolyard, but just in case, another person asks about when I posted the Felix PDF. She wasn't able to download it, and had I locked it so for copyright reasons. I haven't. If you go to the bottom of right underneath the document, you'll see it says download, and you can click on it and it will download, so you can have it for yourself. So for anybody who wanted to keep a copy of that bunch of Felix drawings, I think most of the, if for some reason you can't, let me know. It's possible that it could be locked. When I checked the Felix one, it wasn't, so hopefully you can download it whenever you want to. Good. All right, let's now go to your live questions. So I've handled, I think, most of the questions there, but let's now talk to some of the people who are here live and have some actual questions. So first of all, Wilma. Let's see what Wilma's question is. When you delete artwork on Procreate, are you also deleting the settings made for that piece? Does it go back to a relatively blank slate for the next piece? Okay, so if you delete meaning, I'm sorry, if you delete it meaning that you have gone to what on earth is going on here? If you deleting meaning that you go to the gallery and you delete the file. Well, when you delete the file, it deletes it completely. The next time you open a file, next time you go to the chooser to pick a canvas, you have all the settings you had before. So if you find you're getting into a crazy bind and you can't figure stuff out, by all means delete it if it's overwhelming you. And it does essentially, I think it doesn't reset your tools, because that would be annoying if you customized a tool and then suddenly all your customization wasn't available to you next time you drew. So it doesn't do that. There's probably a way of completely resetting Procreate or reinstalling it. You might get rid of everything you have unless you've backed it up, so that I wouldn't necessarily go there. But I would say generally, when you delete artwork, it doesn't delete the settings. Okay, so if you made specific settings for that piece, I guess you'd have to tell me what they were, and then I could tell you if they are. But from my understanding, no, whenever I start a new canvas, it doesn't really care about anything I've done before. Although the brushes, if I reset brushes, if I made changes there, if I created special palettes and so forth, they're all still in there. They're not going anyway. So, all right. Hope that helps, Wilma. Jill asks, oof, there's a huge picture of Jill for some reason. Very nice picture. Okay, I've seen you swipe to clear layer, but I cannot get that to work. Are there preferences that will allow this? Well, let's have a look at the preferences, and you can see how I've set them up. So I go again to Actions, I go to Gesture Controls, and I go to Clear Layer, and I have it set, which I think was the default, but I have it set so that it says scrubbing back and forth with 3 fingers clears the layer. So when I go here and I scrub with 3 fingers, it clears the layer. Let me show you that again. So I have a line. I scrub with 3 fingers, and it goes away. There are times when you can do that, and then you can end up doing all this kind of craziness. It's just about a finesse. Just put the 3 fingers down, stroke like that. Don't push too hard. Don't go too wild. Don't let your thumb rest down there. Don't let your your pinky finger get down there. Just kind of calm and gentle like that. Okay. I did make a post about this, and you will see that in the help section in the schoolyard. All right. Marilyn asks, can I store artwork or palettes someplace on the iPad? If so, where and how? Well, you're storing them in Procreate. So when you go to your gallery, that's where they all are. They're all stored here. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Are you talking about storing it outside of Procreate? Well, I did set up a tutorial on how to back up your files if you want to store them outside of your iPad, which is a very good idea, and it's something that you should do on a regular basis. If you're using your iPad a lot, I would say every week, every month, make sure you've backed it up, and I've explained how to do that. So your Procreate files are stored in Procreate, but you can back up your files, you can back up your brushes. I'm not sure if you can back up your palettes. I think you probably can too. So, and you can also do a complete backup of your iPad. That's really the smart thing to do. Back up your entire iPad by plugging it into iTunes and doing a backup of your whole iPad. That way, if your iPad gets lost, gets broken, or if you upgrade and buy a new one, you can restore it and put all the files back, and then you'll have everything saved there. But you can also save individual files or individual stacks one at a time or in a group to Dropbox or to the cloud. It's not incredibly smooth, and it's not quite as easy as, say, backing up your computer, but it can be done. I've done it quite a lot. So there's a bunch of different ways of doing that, and as I said, I've posted in the class, and I've also posted in the schoolyard how to do that. All right. In fact, Christine makes a good point. If you upgrade to the new iPad iOS, which I haven't done yet, be sure to back up your iPad first, just in case. It's true. Just always smart to back up. I mean, it would be tragic if you spent years making drawings and then lost them all. In the dog demo, you selected each dog to move. Okay, I think I did that. How did you do this without using the ribbon tool? So as I said, I had already cut and pasted them, and I had drawn them all in separate layers, so that's why. Every time I did a new brush in that demo, I started a new layer. When you've completed a canvas, how do you lock it? You don't really need to lock it. I'm not sure what you mean by lock it. You mean save it? Essentially, what's happening is as you're working in Procreate, your Procreate is saving the whole file. So you don't really need to lock it because you can't change it until you open it. So if it's just sitting in your gallery, there's nothing you can do to it until you actually open it. So I hope that answers that question. If I don't answer this question to your satisfaction, let me know. Let me know. Okay, just post another question. Okay, scrolling down again. Any questions you have, make sure that you put question in uppercase, which Joanna didn't do here. Is there a way to create an ombre effect? I'm working on a bowl literally right now, and I see a shadow on the left. I guess by ombre you mean a gradation, a grad. So there are a number of ways of doing that. Probably the simplest way, frankly, is with the airbrush. So let's just quickly go over and have a look at that. So what I like to do is I like to start by creating a shape using the ribbon. So I'm going to make a shape. Or actually, because we're doing a gradation, why don't we create a rectangle? So there's a rectangle. And now I'm going to take my airbrush. So I go to I can go to spray paints, but I'm going to go to airbrush. I'm going to pick a soft brush. I'm going to pick black. I'm going to make it kind of soft so you can see. Let me just move my head so you can see the settings down here. So yeah, so here I'm moving this to be sort of relatively small, light, about 33%. And then I'm making my brush kind of biggish. Let's see how that works. And then I'm simply, again, let me just show you from this angle so you can actually see what I'm doing with my thing. So I'm just sort of coating it this way. It's one way of doing it. Again, I think that that's too heavy, so I'm lightening it and making it larger. And then, oops, I accidentally made it there. So I'm just doing a gradation that way. And I stroke over it a few times so it gets darker. And then I have a gradation. And then if I wanted to, I can also make sure that I have the same brush, the same airbrush as my eraser, and I can go back the other way and I can lighten it a bit. So therefore, I have a gradation. So pretty simple. Oops, that was Joanna's question. And yeah, so that's how you do a gradation. And of course, it doesn't have to be a rectangle. You could, if you're doing a shadow on a bowl, then draw the shadow, if you want to, with a mask, or in this case with a ribbon, masking out an area, and then just sweep lightly with your airbrush, and you'll get this beautiful gradation. It's quite easy. So that's one way of doing it. All right, so Carla, what is going on with these things? So Carla asks, can you transfer a shape or drawing to another file? Well, you can copy a layer. So if you, I'm not sure, you might be able, no, you can't copy a group. You can copy a layer. So I've shown you how to copy anything, right, by highlighting it. But if you don't highlight any particular thing, but you simply use two fingers to pull down, the menu will show up that allows you to copy, cut, so forth. So just pick copy, go to your other file, open it, and you'll be able to paste it. So let's try that. I'll show you. So here we have this shape of Joanna's, and we like it. So I'm going to do oops, I'm going to take okay. I'm going to take two. It's nice to see that it doesn't work. I'm sorry, 3 fingers I meant. Take 3 fingers to swipe down, copy it. I go to the gallery, or I can even go to, and I create a new file. And then I go with 3 fingers, I paste it, and there it is. It's now in this new file. And you can do that with everything that's on a layer, or you can do it with an individual object if you'd like. So that will allow you to make the most of the things you've made. Okay. Any other questions? Here we go. Anne has the same question. Okay, well, I hope that answers that. I have a horrible time choosing colors, trying to get orange. The whole circle turns yellow and black, and I can't get orange. Okay, well, let's see if we can resolve that in some way. It might be easier actually to go here. Have a look at the actual screen. So, all right. So let's create a new layer. Let's hide this old layer. So go to your disk. So you're having a hard time picking orange. So here's orange, right? We slid around. So what we want to remember is that this is the hue. Here you're picking what is the color, and this is the tone. In here is the tone. So if we pick an orange, there's orange. If we go to black, if we go too far down here, we'll get a very dark orange. But if we go right to this side, so you have to imagine that it is, here's light, here's dark. And when we go all the way here, as you can see from our color dropper, we have a bright orange. So just slide around here in the center, and you are getting variations. Just having a look here, as you can see, looking at my. There's no way that I can zoom in on this, is there? Maybe I can do it here, but hopefully you're getting the gist of what I'm saying. But so here we go. So I'm sliding around here. This glare is really killing me, though, isn't it? Let's try to see if that helps. Okay. So yes, so orange, light orange, dark orange. And you just look basically on this sphere. What are you seeing? Where are you seeing the brightest color? And that should help. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Boy, a lot of you have this question about copying stuff. All right, any other questions? Here we go. Kathy's question. I missed the part of your answer to Barb's question about resizing and moving dogs. Where do I find cut and paste? Okay, I have shown a tutorial about this, but I will show you again how to do it. Okay, so cut and paste pops up in a window when you swipe down. So what you want to do is you want to go to your settings, your spanner, your wrench, go to gesture controls, and here you'll see copy and paste. In my case, I have it set to 3-fingered swipe. You could do it 4-fingered tap. You could do it on a tap. You could set up all these different ways of doing it. But if you, of course, set it up to use these features, these mechanisms for copy and paste, you won't be able to use them somewhere else. There'll be a conflict. So in my case, I like 3-fingered swipe. It works fine for me. So now I just take, let's take a thing. There's my shape. And then I take my 3 fingers. I swipe down. This pops up. I do cut and paste in this case. And what has happened when I did that, when we go over here and we look at layers, cut and paste has been moved to a new layer. Okay? I created a whole tutorial on this, which is, again, in the schoolyard. So if that isn't entirely clear, please check that out, and it will help you to understand. Okay. Okay. Fran, I see you didn't put the question thing, but I think I will try to answer you anyway, despite this. Okay, so how can you drop black and white into your palette? So you can drop any color into your palette. You can create, let's create a new palette so you can really see how that works, okay? So we go to palettes, we go to colors, and I'm going to go down here to palettes, and then I go up here to plus. You know, I'm just going to try something new here. All right, let's try this. Maybe this will be better. Okay. That looks a bit better. Okay, so now I have a new palette here. It's called Untitled Palette. And what I do is any color that I have here in my picker, right, I just touch, I simply touch on the palette, and it's there. Now I pick a different color. There's green, for instance. It's now up here in the color picker. I come down and I touch, and there it is. And if I don't like it, I hold on it, and it allows me to delete it. And I delete it. And if I set it as default, you see this option here, default? If I click default, when I come over here to disk, that palette is going to appear here as my default palette. And I could continue to build it here with other colors and have a new palette. Hey, that's quite nice, actually. So, and then I can change my default palette later on if I want to, but this allows me to build a palette. I believe we'll go into that in colors if we haven't already. So yeah. All right, guys, again, please put the word question before your questions, because otherwise I'm reading a lot of comments and I'm not sure exactly how to deal with that. But okay, so Susan says, I noticed you swiping through drawings and it appeared to be in Procreate. How do you do that? Okay, let me show you how I do that. So what we do is we go to Gallery. Go to the gallery. Come on. And then I will take a drawing. I pinch it. Watch me pinch. So can you see me pinch it? And it's big. And then I simply slide across. Don't I? It's not reacting well for some reason. I think it just froze. This happens sometimes with Procreate. It freezes, in which case you have to reboot it. So let's say I go into this gallery and I do it. Then I'm just simply, into this stack, I'm sorry. As I'm doing it, it allows me to, or it should. It allows, oh boy, it's not showing you this very well. There we go. So I'm simply swiping across and we're looking at all these beverages. And then I do it again, and it snaps me out of it. And so in theory, I can do that with, for some reason it's not doing it here. I think maybe it doesn't do it in a drawing outside of a stack. That may not be true, but by the way, if you ever find that Procreate's behaving really badly, here's how you quit it. You just, if you're in Procreate and it's misbehaving, just go up to your, just go up to that, double click on it, and then you can quit Procreate by just simply sliding it up, and then it's gone. And then when you relaunch it, it kind of reboots it, and then if you're having a problem, it will usually go away. Okay. Joanna, when do I know to change to a new layer? Again, I don't necessarily, there's not a really one answer to it. It depends on what you want to do. I like to use, we have so many layers at our disposal, so I like to have a lot of them. And, if I have too many, I can always collapse them. So I would say, if in doubt, add another layer. So if, for instance, I'm going to experiment with something, I'm going to try drawing something in a couple different ways, and I want to make sure that I have those options before I commit, I'll do that on a separate layer. If I'm trying to do some shading, for instance, I will do that on a separate layer, and then I'll make that transparent, and I'll change the opacity of it. There's just, or if I want to have just things that I want to move around separately, that I'm thinking of as different elements, I will put them on different layers. So it's really, you kind of have your own work style, and it's up to you to decide how that works. So Cheryl asks, will you cover textures and shading? Absolutely. We'll spend a huge amount of time on that, and I'll show you demos. That's going to come up in the next week or two. Okay. Yes, more about copying to different. How do you create a grade 80 background? Okay, I've done that. I've shown you that. If you missed it, David, I did it earlier. You can watch it in the how do you transfer a shape or drawing to another Procreate file? Hopefully you understood that that's what I was doing. I copied it in one document, in one canvas, closed that canvas, opened another canvas, and pasted it down there using the three-fingered swipe. So once you copy something in one canvas, it remains in the memory until you paste it wherever you're going to. Could be in the same layer, could be in a different layer, could be in an entirely different canvas. It all works. Yes, this is a very frequent question. Okay, a lot of us asking about copying a layer from one drawing to, yes, okay, hopefully I've answered that now. I guess I missed this. Is there a way to keep the layer palette open all the time? Okay, there isn't, however, there isn't a way to keep the layer palette open all the time, but a couple of thoughts. One, there's going to be a new version of Procreate that's going to be coming out relatively soon, Procreate 5, which I understand has tear-away palettes at the very least. So you can remove the palette from the upper hand corner and position it wherever you want to while you continue to work. It may be true of the layers as well. I haven't seen enough to know, but that is an indication that they are realizing that that's what people want to do. You don't want to just keep going back and forth. So yes, so they're going to do that. But in the meantime, you could also lock your layers, which is a great way to make sure that you don't draw on the wrong layer, right? This is something that we've all had that experience of probably by now, where you're doing a drawing, you move to another layer, you go back and check your first layer, and then you start drawing again, and you forget that you've changed layers. And suddenly you've added lines on top of a layer that you wanted the lines to be on the other layer. So what you can do is you can say to yourself, well, before I switch to a new layer, before I switch to another layer, let me lock this. How do I lock it? I slide it across, I lock it, and now when I create a new layer, it is, here it is. That was silly. Here is, it's on my other layer. And if I go back to my previous layer, I'm going to close that layer, I go back to my previous layer, and I try and draw on it, you can't tell, but it doesn't work. And it says, the current selection contains locked items. Would you like to open layers? You see? So it's not going to let me draw it. But then if I want to unlock it, I can just go back, I can unlock it, and then, I can draw on it. You see? So there we go. That is what we can do in the meantime until this new version of Procreate comes out. Now, when it comes out, I don't want you to worry too much that everything you've learned is dead, because based on I've gone through, I think, 3 different versions of Procreate now, and generally everything I've learned, it's just additive. So they'll add more features, but everything you know already will continue to work and will continue to be useful. So that's good. All right. Question, my neck and shoulders are hurting since I draw on the iPad. Do you have any tips to avoid this? I don't specifically. It hasn't really been a problem for me. I would suggest that maybe you want to work on a table rather than working on your lap and holding it up. it's easy to like kind of lie down slouching. But any of that kind of ergonomic stuff, not really my department. But you know, I would also say look at how tightly you're holding things. Are you holding the pen really tightly? Are you holding the iPad really tightly? You know, maybe that is contributing to your situation. All right. Sometimes if my selected shape is smallish, I have a hard time resizing it or moving it. Okay. Well, let's have a look at what we can do about that. The most obvious thing I would say is zoom in. Pretty easy, right? So if you zoom in, that little piece is now suddenly large. Now I go to my selection tool, automatic, and it's pretty easy to select. Whereas when I zoom out, you can see that was just a little tiny thing. So yeah, zooming is probably the easiest way to just get in there and make sure you get the right kind of amount of detail. Using the transform tool, what do you do differently to move, not resize? The transform tool. To move and not resize. Okay. Well, maybe you're not selecting. I assume by transform tool you're talking about this arrow. So you want to move it and not resize it. So if you grab it by the corner, you're going to resize it. But if you grab it in the middle, you're going to not resize it. You're going to just move it. So that, I would say that is the issue, is don't pick the little dot, but just go in the middle of the object. And you know, turning it, by the way, is something that you do with this green. Oops, let me see if you can see it. Turning green thing. It's also really good, by the way, so you don't get distortion, is to use uniform. If you use uniform, it's not gonna get distorted. Whereas if you use freeform, you know, you might squeeze and squish your thing. And if you use distort, of course, then it's gonna get really screwed up. So make sure you put on uniform if you just want to make it uniformly bigger or smaller. So I hope that answers that question. Confusion about the dog demo is that the demo didn't show you creating new layers. I mean, I guess that's true. I apologize for that. I would say yes, it's true. And I guess I didn't really, I was just kind of shoving them aside so that we could show you in the demo. But part of the thing about putting this course together that I had to work through was there's so many things to teach you, and I wanted to do them in a step-by-step way. And sometimes I would have to use a tool that I hadn't actually had the chance to demonstrate yet in order just to do the demo. In this case, it was clearly confusing to people, and I apologize for that, particularly when I then asked you to do a similar thing. So let's see. Using the transform tool, if you put your pencil in the open area of the selection, yes, exactly. Barb has answered the question too. How do you erase a palette? How do you erase a palette? Well, you can just go to palettes, I mean, if you want to, and then you can slide it across like that and delete it. Or you can share it too. So if you do that and you share it, it will allow you to export it, and then you can export it and share it like you would an image. So you can email it to somebody or you can upload it. But yeah, slide to the side to share it or to delete it. How would you build a palette for portrait skin tones with gradations? I actually have one like that. And the skin tones palette. One way of doing it, and I don't believe I've talked about it yet, but I'll show you how you can take a photograph or a painting and you can import it into Procreate, and then you can use the eyedropper tool to make selections of lots of different facial tones. So for instance, you could take a portrait of a person and you could select lots of different skin tones, and then you could rearrange them, because you can move things around. You can move things, you can move your selections from one place to another. So you could just rearrange them until you had them in the sequence that you wanted to, or you could select them. Be careful when you're selecting them, and select them in a range of tones. I'm having difficulty creating a palette by sampling colors from a photo. Could you go over that? Well, I believe I did in the class. So, but in the sake, I'll just show you quickly how to do it here. I kind of did this already, so we only have not that much time, but well, I'll just do it from a drawing. I'll just do it from this image. So I could set up a palette, create a new palette. There's my palette. And then I can hold my finger down, pick that color, tap on it, there it is. I can go to the gray, tap, there it is. I go to the red, tap, there it is. So I'm building up a palette from the colors that are here. And as you can see, if you look, you see there's that little tiny, you see how it's varying as I go from the background of this tie to the dots? The little plus is showing me where exactly I am, so that I can make sure that I pick the specific color that I want. And so you go through that process. But I'm not sure if it was this week or not that I did it. Okay, that I explained that. Can you export a stack as a portfolio to show someone outside the program? I'm not sure if you can export the whole thing. So I would say probably you can't. Yeah, it's difficult because as soon as you touch on, but what you can do is you can go up here to select, and then you can pick whichever ones you want. You see how they have blue check marks. And then you can go up to share, and you could say, I want this to be a PDF. And then I choose my quality of PDF. And then let's say I want to open it. What should I open it in? Notability, I think, is. I'm trying to remember what my PDF program is. So anyway, so when I go to Notability, it will be in there. It will be a PDF. So yes, so that's a way of doing it. It's not directly copying a whole stack, but it's selecting everything that's in a stack. So hopefully that's what you were looking for. Is anyone in Europe using a different iPad screensaver than the one Danny is using? Amazon is not shipping this one to Germany. You know, I just replaced my screensaver. I want to have a new one and I'm not that happy with it, honestly. I think I didn't put it on exactly correctly. So the reason I bring that up, in fact, it's like a little bit bent down here. The reason I bring that up is because don't get crazy about what screensaver you use. I think that I would go to Amazon and I would look at ones that people rate highly. The one that I'm using, it's not really essential that you use that one. Certainly not. There's plenty. Or don't use one at all, honestly. I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. I'm kind of thinking of maybe even getting rid of mine. So we'll see. Ali says, I'm a beginning drawer. Would you recommend the eraser homework be drawn from a black and white image rather than from real life? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can draw. Are you talking about like tracing it or erasing it? I mean, it's kind of up to you. I mean, if drawing is still a challenge, maybe a lot of these techniques might feel too advanced for you if you're having trouble actually doing a drawing at all, in which case you might want to take How to Draw Without Talent, my other class. But I would say you can certainly draw from anything you want to. I mean, I drew that particular thing that I showed you while I was sitting outside the New York Public Library, but you know, you could certainly copy a photo and try the same technique. I mean, look for a photograph that has high contrast. So if you could find like a photo of somebody in a dark background with a bright light on them, so you can really see the difference between dark and light, that would be a good thing to practice on. But yeah, it's a great technique, and you can also combine it with other techniques. So let's see what else we have here. Is there a way to put the colors within your palette in color order? Not automatically. As you saw, you can just drag them around into whatever order you want to have them in. You know, again, usually if you build a palette as an artist, if you put palette colors in your watercolor set, you put them in whatever order you like. So I think Procreate is following that assumption that you'll want to build your own palette in your own way. When I select a brush, it goes to the brush detail, which must be exited to return to the canvas. Is there a shortcut straight from selecting the brush to return to the canvas? Well, I think it may be a function of how you're doing it, because I go to canvas and I pick my brush, and then I just go and touch on the canvas, and I'm back. So that's all you need to do, is just move from picking a brush to using it, and it will work. So hopefully that solves that problem. Yes, okay, good. I think I've answered all your questions. Is it possible? Yes, it seems like it might be. That's great, good, I'm glad. I'm glad that you have all these questions. It means that you're working at it, you're trying stuff out, and that is awesome. I'm really pleased to see that and to hear that you're kind of working it through. Here's the thing I did last week. I just drew this while I was standing in my kitchen, by the way. Maybe I'll show you this. Lots and lots of layers. Lots and lots of layers. Layers for apples and layers for all these different reflections. But I was kind of happy with how that turned out. It was, as I said, drawn from life, and I kind of just built it up. Let me see if I can show you the movie of it. You can watch that. So first I drew this thing and I kind of colored it in a bit, and then on a new layer, I started building the shape of the other apples that were underneath it and putting some speckling in on them. And I also had yet another apple way in the back. This apple right here is on another layer too. And a lot of these speckling and shading are on different layers. And then I'm kind of going in here and sharpening up and really trying to look at how the reflections are bouncing back and forth between the apples, and trying to boost up the color by layering. And now I'm starting to draw the bowl around them, at first very crudely, and then once I have the kind of shape of it, now I'm really looking at the light, because it's a crystal bowl and has lots of different light reflections. A lot of this I was doing here. I was drawing shapes with the masks, and then I was airbrushing to get these kind of gradations and all this kind of reflective shape. So there you have it. That was my project last week, doing that. Okay, great. Let me see, any final questions? Interesting. Colleen says she took an iPad screenshot of a Copic marker catalog map, a Copic marker color map, and then imported it and used that to create a palette. Great suggestion. You could go and get watercolor maps too. Watercolor, this things that come with, say, a box of Winsor Newton, and then that way you'll know that you're getting exactly the colors that you have in your watercolors, if that's what you want to do. There's so many ways of building up palettes, and it's a great thing to do. And as you can see from my work, just the way my iPad is set up, I have lots and lots of palettes, lots and lots of different ones for different projects I was working on, and it's been really helpful. And what's great about having a lot of palettes is that when you sit down to do something, you get to a point where you don't need to even look for new colors, because you already have them in some palette somewhere, But so, for instance, like this top one is called Midtown. It's because it's a palette that I built when I was drawing buildings in Midtown, and I was interested in all the kinds of shapes of steel and reflections. So lots of different kinds. I have a Van Gogh one here. That's all just colors that are selected from Van Gogh. And this is from a friend of mine who's an illustrator whose work I really admire, Phoebe. So just lots of different ones that I've built over time. All right, good. So I think we are just about through today. If you have any other questions, why don't you save them for next week's webinar? It'll also be same time on Friday. Hopefully it'll be at noon on Friday. I apologize for today being a bit earlier. But, if you have questions that you want me to answer directly, put them in the event in the schoolyard. If you're not in the schoolyard, by the way, I urge you strongly to join it. It's a great place to share your homework. It's a great place to get answers to technical questions from other students, to learn what they're running into and how they're solving it. I think community is always important at Sketchbook School. It's important in every class that we offer, but it's particularly important in this one because there's so many variables and we're all learning them simultaneously. So it's a great way to share knowledge. So if you haven't joined the schoolyard, the invitation to do so was in the very first email you got, so go back and look at it. It's simple to do. All you need to do is set up an account, which takes 2 minutes, put in your name, your email address and a password, and you're in. And there's so many more interesting things going on than just tips that I gave you. But generally for me, like, I go into the schoolyard basically every day and I look at what people are talking about, and if I can help, I'll make comments and I'll jump into. So if you need more input from me, that's the place to go and get it. You can also direct message me in the schoolyard, and I can help you with any problems that you're having. So please use the schoolyard. It's a fantastic tool. It's way better than Facebook or any other social community you've ever been in. It's full of Sketchbook School people. By the end of the year, there are going to be 10,000 people in this community, and they're all people who love to draw, love Sketchbook School, love the iPad, and are really helpful and supportive with each other. You can also find people who gather in your community. You can find people who live near you, so you can get together and share, draw together on your iPad, go to a park or go and draw a building and so forth. So there's lots of ways of extending what you're learning in this class by joining the schoolyard, and I hope that you will do that, because the schoolyard has always been something that we dreamed of doing and dreamed of making, and now we have built this thing. It's been open for about 6 months. People are joining it every day. It's really fantastic. It's a great place to meet friends. So please do sign up. Even if you're the kind of person who doesn't like to share your work, the kind of person who doesn't like social media, I would say break your assumptions and try it out, because it's really nice and fun. And you can just lurk. You can just see what other people are saying. I think it's really good. And as Janice says, schoolyard forever. So I'll see you again next week. There's more stuff to learn. It's going to get crazier. We're going to do wilder and wilder stuff. And keep going. Keep going. You are already well on the road to being an iPad artist, and there's only more to come. So thanks again. I'll see you next week.